Kara Shalom, welcome to our watercolor journey. Today's painting is fairly easy and it has a limited palette of blues and yellows with sepia and Paynes grey. The materials used are listed in the description below. Make sure that you have a spray bottle handy because it's going to be used a little bit later on. The paper is at a 515 degree angle, and make sure that you wet it thoroughly so that you have a good wet background for the first layer. We're going to start at the top with Cobalt Blue, and then we are going to add a little bit of Lavender to just give that haziness to the sky. Once that is flowing in, you are going to move over to raw Sienna at the bottom just to establish the first layer of your foreground, and then you're going to use the Naples Yellow in the sky. Now Naples Yellow is an opaque color, so it doesn't mix easily with the blue, and therefore you won't have a green sky. Add a bit of Paynes grey to the top to make it a bit darker, and then complete your foreground or your first layer by adding the blues and the browns as shown here. Don't worry too much if the water is running down like that. It pools at the bottom. You can use some of that water to work the paint in, and if it gets too much, just dab it out with a paper towel. To give a little bit of darkness to the foreground, which you're going to need it later on, it should be a bit bolder. Add some more Paynes grey and some more sepia. You can splatter it in, or you can just dab it in, and then work it in a little bit with a few loose strokes. Keep using the water that's pooling at the bottom, and if it's too much, again, just wipe it off. Make sure to wipe it off so that it doesn't seep into the tape and ruin your painting in the process. Once that is done, you can let your painting dry thoroughly, please. Now we are going to start with Lavender and some of the Naples Yellow, some of the raw Sienna, and we're going to make the trees. Now on the sunny side, or the left side, we add the yellows, and then we go darker to the right side of each of the trees because that side is in the shadow. And you mix the colors on the paper. So as you see, when you dip the colors into each other, they make their own blues and greens eventually. So it makes for a very interesting color combination. One would think you cannot use blue for a tree, but the moment that you add the raw sienna or the Naples Yellow or even the sepia, it gives it a beautifully natural look. Notice that the brush is not rinsed. We just dab it into the colors as we go, and that is how we create almost a gray at the end here at the bottom, just to give that neutral faraway look that you get when you look at trees that are in a distance. Now use some water to spread the paint at the bottom a little bit to help establish the middle ground. The lavender again, and this time we are going to keep to the blues mostly because this tree or clump of trees is a little bit further in the distance. So it has to be a cooler color than what we have on the right to show that there's distance between them. You don't have to make distinctive brush strokes. Basically just dab it in, squiggle the brush around, and then you have your shapes. Add another layer to the foreground by using water and using the paint that's already there, and just bring it down, spread it out a little bit more. Bring a bit of warmth into the foreground with the raw sienna, and then for shadows you add the sepia. Here you can also do a little bit of dry brushing, and that would give a little bit more texture to your painting. It stops it from looking uniform, you know, just one flat wash. So dry brushing, use the tip of the brush, use the side of the brush. Vary your brush strokes so that you can have different textures and different looks in your painting. Now don't be afraid to use the blues or the lavender or any of your colors in the front here. By having the same colors in the front as you have at the back or at the top of the paper, you create harmony, so the whole thing talks to each other. Leave a few light spots just to give you some variation. This is a sunset or a sunrise scene, depending on how you look at it. So you are going to have more silhouetted figures in it or elements in it. And that is why the very closest foreground is fairly dark, because that is where the sun definitely does not reach. So when you start creating your elements in it, you are going to mostly use the sepia and the Paynes grey blue, so that it gives you the silhouetted colors. The Chinese calligraphy brush is very handy for this type of work. The tip is long and thin, and the brush itself is quite flexible and yet sturdy. So if you want to draw a line like we do here for the tree trunks, then it doesn't move around too much. But when you want to draw leaves or thin grasses or just add a little bit of detail like these branches, this brush really just does the trick. It is also quite easy to use. And it definitely holds a lot of water and pigment. Don't mess too much with the branches and the tree trunks here at the beginning, because you are going to add a few more details a little bit later on to make it clearer and to give it a little bit of a shadow and more definition. Lavender is a very amazing color. Just by adding a bit of the Paynes grey there, you have a beautiful soft grey that works very well also to give you that distant look and the shadowy look that you get from the sun coming from the back. Using the same color to create definition in your terrain also helps a lot. Your terrain shouldn't be just flat. Use different angles, diagonal strokes and so on, to give it more of a design, more of a natural look. And then you can use the Chinese brush also to splatter in some of the paint, and that helps with a little bit more texture. So if it's too dry there, you can use the spray bottle, and the spray bottle helps to diffuse the paint a little bit. Let it dry again. Now that it's very, very dry, you can do your final touches with the last elements that you want to put on. And we're starting here with the tree and the Chinese calligraphy brush again. Press a little bit harder if you want broader strokes, and press a little bit softer, use more of the tip if you want your thinner strokes. So for the tree trunk, you will press harder, and then for the branches, you will use the tip. And don't try to be too precise. A tree isn't precise. It is natural, so it grows everywhere. And it doesn't have to be uniform. Of course, it has to look natural, so you are going to make all kinds of different strokes and dots and dashes there, and add as many branches and little twigs as you want, because it's your tree and it can look the way you want it to look. Make sure that you ground the tree at the bottom so that it doesn't look like it's floating in mid-air. Where the light side is there, you can add a few touches of the burnt sienna, the raw sienna, and that would just give a little bit of light to the tip of the tree there. Add some grasses, and that also helps to ground the tree and to make it look nice and flat on the ground. Sometimes we forget that a tree will have a shadow, or that the grasses will have a shadow, and we neglect to put that in. So just by adding a stroke or two on the bottom or at the bottom of the tree will already give it a more sturdy look, and that it belongs there, it should be there. To balance out the painting, you can add a few strokes of grass on the right hand side, maybe some footsteps or other grasses in the middle, just to make the painting look more alive. You really don't want it to have this dead look. Every element that you add should have a purpose to it. Don't be too random. If you put a tree in, the tree should have a reason to be there. And that is what is happening here. Few strokes of grasses and so on to give your landscape that almost desolate look, but also the look of I'm here, I'm alive, I belong here. With a landscape like this, it looks like you are adding a lot of detail, but actually you're not. The little dots and dashes, the splattering, is what gives it dimension and gives it texture. And your eyes will fill in whatever you need to see there. So don't worry too much to be too detailed. To add a bit of light, you can use white acrylic, you can use gouache. Any of those white opaque paints will help to add more light to your painting. It is necessary to play the light against the dark here, just to give it more of a dimension. I keep saying dimension because I have no idea what other word to use here, but it makes it more interesting. And with this white splattering as well, you can use it, adding more light to the painting. On the left-hand side of each of the trees as well, dab in a few dots of the gouache to add light. Light is very, very important. You cannot just have a dark blob there. You need to have a little bit of a highlight to give it a dimension, natural look, something like that. Of course, Heinrich likes the birds, so just to add a finishing touch to it, and again to add life to the painting, you add a bird or two, and it looks like a very serene open field where nature is happy. And there you have it. Thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and please leave us a comment to tell us what you think of this painting. Please have a fantastic day. Vaya con Dios.